Alright, so here is my spacer that goes behind the guard. It's a fat 5/16 short 3/8. And by the way, that guard, which, why did I show you the drawing? Here's the real thing. The guard is 200 thousandths. So anyway, this, I have not put this on there yet. I don't know what's going to happen, or which, maybe one side's better, I don't know. But I already rounded the shoulders over on the guard, so that's out of the equation. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Slid right on. It slid on. Now, I can't go... See that gap you see right there only goes halfway through the slot. See how tall that is? What I did, remember, I reduced my tang so I could get a little more meat on my handle. So down in the bottom where we can't kind of see, where we really can't see, the guard or the spacer is locked on there tight. Zero play, just perfectly snug. And everything's flat and true. And I'm gonna make a comment. This is all opinion. I don't want to make anybody mad. I met Jerry Radis in '96 and or 98. By 2000 I was making takedown knives, and before I even had a computer, before I knew what the ABS was, or before anybody was, I was making takedown knives. And when finally it got online and was on blade forums and stuff, and I started posting these things up, people are going, "What the hell? What the hell is that?" Well, I didn't have a surface grinder, okay? I didn't have a variable speed disc sander and a bigger mill. All I had, I did have that lathe, but all I had was this small little mill and a surface plate with sandpaper, okay? And that's how I got my ricassos and tangs flat, and careful sanding on a ceramic platen on a grinder. So I got my tangs and my ricassos dialed in, and it might take an hour and a half, but you don't have to have a surface grinder to build a good knife. So don't say you can't do this. Now, another thing is, you don't have to build this as a takedown knife. You can get her all said and done and get all this assembly done and screwed up tight, and you can fill her full of epoxy and it's there forever. But until you're done with it, you have the option of taking this thing apart and doing file work on individual parts and pieces, and hot bluing and etching Damascus fittings, or whatever it is you want to do. So anyway, I encourage it. And if you don't have a mill, get it. I can never say, this is the single most important little thing I've ever bought. I paid $600 for it 18 years ago. You know, what is that? What does that end up being? Almost 20 years. It's almost $30 a year is what I have invested in this thing, and what the amount of work it has done is, it's a mountain of work I have done on that little machine. So anyway, get yourself a mill and have a good time. So anyway, now that these are fitted, now that I have a fitted and you know what, I never tape my knives up. I don't know why. I don't beat them up, for one thing. Now that I've got these fitted, the next thing to do, what's the next thing down the line? It's the handle. I'm going to cut out this handle profile. Now, here's my handle material, and this is going to be some rock and walnut. Wait till you see it. It's actually very dark. But I have taken this in my mill, and I've done the same thing that I do on my guard material, on my hardware materials. This is 4 90-degree corners. This is surface. I mill it flat, so the big flat sides are perpendicular, and then in my mill I mill the shoulders, or the skinny side, so I've got 4 90-degree corners. Because the first thing I'm going to do is take this pattern, put it on here, and I'm going to cut out the 2-dimensional handle. I'm going to fit something that looks like this. I'm not going to fit the block and then shape it. I never understood going that direction. Cut the profile, cut your 2-dimensional profile first, fit it to your guard, and I mean, it's already there. You already know what you need to know. You don't need to start shaping the profile after you get it fitted to the guard. In my mind, that's backwards. It's just bass-ackwards. So I'm going to cut this out on here, and then I'm going to fit it to the tang. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I have cut out my handle profile right here and transferred it to my handle material. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. One thing I also do is I mark the face of it with pencil. I take a square like this and mark the end with the square, and then I also mark the other side of the square, so I have two parallel lines, and that way if this top line gets cut off and disappears, I always have a reference as to what the original angle should be, and I can transfer off of this if necessary. But anyway, I'll go cut this out on the bandsaw now, and then we'll get this fitted to the tang. Alright, I have cut out the handle material, the basic two-dimensional profile, leaving a little extra meat for handle removal. And see, here we can still see our pencil mark. What I'm going to do is take this over to the bigger mill and set it up in there. That's another reason I mill the sides and have this thing a perfect rectangle, is because I'm going to stand this up in the mill, and I'm going to take a 1/2 inch end mill and mill the face of this handle material perfectly flat, and it will then be perpendicular to the two sides. So I'm just eliminating steps of fit up. I don't have to tweak anything, because everything is flat, perpendicular, parallel, etc. Okay, I'm going to go mill this. Okay, I have cut out the profile of the handle, set it on top of the guard, and of course after I just milled it, I milled the face of the handle material, stood it up in my mill and milled that off flat, so I don't have to worry about that fit. Now I'm just looking at the angle of how the handle fits the knife, and I like it. If I did not like the bit of the drop here on the butt end, I would put it back in the mill, change the angle of the face a little bit, and adjust this angle with the end mill, and either drop or lower the butt end of the knife, whatever it is I wanted to do. So that works real well, and I'm kind of happy with how this is falling down like that. Now I'm going to mill the butt end and get it nice and straight. Okay, so here now is how my tang is sitting on things. I do not like how this camera reads these colors. It looks red in here, but nothing is red. Anyway, the very next thing for me to do is take this knife into the grind room, and I'm going to grind the threaded portion of that tang and thread it, and then I can see where things are. But I've already determined my two-dimensional shape of the handle, and I haven't drilled a hole in it yet. So I don't like that direction of doing things. Take a big block of stuff, stick it on a tang, and then shape it. That just is reverse to me. I'm sorry. The first thing I do, I use a 1032 thread. So the first thing I have done is ground this thing around at 190 thousandths, and now I'll thread it for a 1032 thread. Okay, I've now threaded the tang, of course, and removed excess material that's not necessary. Now, I got a cough drop I'm chewing up, so I apologize. It's a 1032 thread, and you can look up on a lot of reference charts. I think a 1032 screw has a yield strength of just about a 1/2 ton. And I once took a 1032 thread and picked up a utility trailer I had with a dozen concrete blocks on it. So it might look small in the real world, but I've never had one break in, 18 years. Hundreds and hundreds of these knives, and it's almost a 1/2 ton yield strength. And one other thing real quickly, in case anybody's confused. See this brass, this big, actually it's copper I think on this one, on this paintbrush that the handle slides down into? That's a ferrule. See that brass ring on your pencil that your eraser slides down into? That's a ferrule. See this ring on the file that this handle fits down into? That's a ferrule. This thing is not a ferrule. It's a spacer or a collar. Nothing fits down into it. These things are ferrules. That's what ferrules are. That's just a spacer. A lot of knife makers call those things ferrules, and they're not. Anyway, some guys actually do make knives with ferrules, where they will insert the handle down into it, you know, by filing and so forth, which is pretty cool, and they're actually ferrules. That's why I point this out, is some collectors out there know what a ferrule is, and if you're saying you have a ferrule on your knife but it's just a spacer, you might cause a problem with the customer. So anyway, these are just spacers. And now hang on and I'll be back here in a second. Okay, what I did was I just have a little threaded extension that I put on that tang, and I'll run it all the way out the run it out the butt hole so I can figure out where my butt hole is. But now I will extended that past the end of the butt on the knife so I can get figure out where to drill my hole. But I'll just trace around this tang on the side of the handle, and that will show me where I need to drill the hole for my tang to slide into. And I'll, of course, being the assembly that it is, I'll be drilling from both ends. Okay, I have taken the outline of my tang and transferred it around to the face of the handle material, and find the center line, and then that will tell me where to drill my tang. And I'll use long shank end mills. I've got and I'll be doing it here in the mill with my drill chuck that I put my 1/2 inch end mill in there when I milled the face square and flat, because I knew I'm going to be using I have a whole series of drill bits here with long shank end mills and drill bits, and to create the pocket for the tang. All right, I'll be doing that. Okay, got my handle is on, and there's my butthole. You're looking at my butthole. So what I'm going to do now is just basically get me a hole drilled in the center of the butt cap, and it's going to be a 2-step hole because my finial will have a shoulder on it that'll pull that thing tight without scratching things. So anyway, this is where we're at right now. I'm going to be running this into the butt cap and create a hole with a shoulder on it. And that pilot on there, I use a number 7 drill bit first to run this into, and then I'll open the number 7 hole up with a F or a G, just a little bit bigger than a 1/4, but you'll see here shortly. Okay, now I put my step drill in here, and what I want to do is create a step in that thing. Of course, the pilot of the drill bit's going to go in the hole, and then then the bigger diameter is going to start cutting a larger size hole, and I want to leave about 80 or 90 thousandths of the smaller hole down in the bottom. So I'm going to run this in there right now until the large diameter of the bit just hits the surface of the material.